Why, hello everybody, welcome, my name is Rubydung, welcome to today's episode. As you can see, I'm here in the main base. That is because I am going to be doing some stuff around here. More accurately, I'm just going to be doing some farming primarily, but I am going to be doing some farming over here at the tree farm, but I'm actually going to be doing this on camera a little bit, because today is a Q&A episode. I went through all of my episodes, found new questions that you guys asked, and I will be trying my best to answer them. Now, you might be wondering, why am I doing this? Well, a long time ago, let me actually check something. I do need bone meal in here, so to start off today's episode, I'm going to be running all the way over to the skeleton farm and getting some bone meal. But you guys might be wondering, why are you doing this episode? Well, a very long time ago, a few years, matter of fact, I believe this would have, so I know for sure this was back before Hunger came out, but I believe this would have still been beta 1.7, but yeah, somewhere around that range. I released an episode called 42, and called it The Answer to Everything. Now, you might be wondering why I called it that. Well, one of my all-time favorite books ever is Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and in that book, 42 is kind of this enigma. It is the answer kind of thing. It's a very weird thing. I recommend reading the book. It's very good. It's a very short read as well, about only slightly over 100 pages, if I remember correctly, so it's a very good book. But I called my episode that just in reference to that, and the title really wasn't that appropriate to the actual, circumstances of the episode, except that I think I passingly mentioned it once. But in that episode, I got a couple of people basically being like, hey, I thought this was going to be a QA episode based off the name of that title. And I was like, you know what? That's fair. That is completely fair. It should have been a Q&A episode. So, I decided, 100 episodes later, in episode 142, I was like, you know what, I'm going to have this be a QA episode, and why not? Because what happened was the episode beforehand, Horses just came out, and I was kind of stranded in the middle of the ocean, and I'd been sailing for hours. So, I was like, you know what, I need to get back home anyways, so I'm just going to spend the rest of this episode just sailing, basically, and try to find my way home, and during the entire process, I am just going to do a QA. So, I spent an hour sailing all the way back home, and then eventually I did get back home, and by the time I did, I finished the QA. Well, technically, I finished the QA by the time I found land, so my original QA episode is just me sailing in an ocean and maybe finding one or two islands. It is not visually very interesting. So, that is what happened there, and I've had since been asked more questions, so I'm going to try answering those questions, and I'm going to recap a couple of the other questions as well, so that way you don't have to go through the entire old QA, but I'm not going to answer them as much in depth, just simply because it's not really necessary. I've already answered some of the questions, so I'm just going to touch on them slightly, just for anyone who's already seen it, so no need to get into answering those multiple times, in which case I'm actually going to start with some of the questions I've already answered. For example, why did I start my series? Well, I answered that in the first episode of my series, and I answered that in the QA episode, in which case, the short of it was, I've been playing Minecraft for a very long time, and the Alpha 1.2 build just came out, and it came up with, a little name, a picture, all this cool stuff. It was, actually shown to be, this big release. Nowadays releases, it wasn't that big, but, at the time, it was jaw-dropping. It was absolutely amazing. I need to throw some stuff out of my inventory so that way I get space to make bone meal. But at the time, it was absolutely staggering, because an update like that was absolutely massive, and the most notable part of it is it came with a new dimension. The Nether was released during that time, and yeah, so basically, absolutely enormous. The same as how, whenever a new dimension was also added to the game next time, it came with the full release of the game. So, just to show you how big of a deal a new dimension is to the game, they did it in alpha, and it was like one of the last big updates for alpha, if I remember correctly. And then, if I remember correctly, alpha my series ended not too long after that. But yeah, that, and when that came out, I was like, yo, I actually want to do something special. A couple of people online began doing, like, Let's Play stuff, and I was like, you know what, I might as well. I'm not the type of person who could really explain the game, though, and I do not have the viewership that a lot of people did who, like, giving tutorials on the game. And there was already so many people who were doing that, so I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna play the game. I'm not gonna sit down and tutorialize the game. So many people already have. I'm just gonna play the game. I need to get a little bit more bones now. I think I can honestly just get that from the mob spawner. So that's really what's inspired me to start my series. But also with that, is why did I start playing Minecraft? In which case, I'm going to give a very short answer, is that I saw someone mention the build of the game on a Lego forum, which is a hobby of mine. It's one of those hobbies that's always in my life. I was really into it when a few years, then I touched out of it, but I still wanted to really stay tuned with it. So I kind of like would always listen to that kind of stuff. And one thing I was looking for was any visual formats that Lego might have done, like virtual. That's it. Any virtual things that Lego may have done. And someone just passingly mentioned how someone released a very experimental online thing with a bunch of blocks. Would you go look at it? It looked very interesting. It was definitely up my alley, because one of my favorite things with Lego isn't building the sets, but just building random things with stuff you get from the sets. Because I always like it whenever Lego prints a new piece, and it's just like, ooh, how do you use this new piece? Some of them are more interesting than others, though, so you wind up getting that weird kind of fluctuation. But that's, like, the main part there is, I've always been interested in those types of creative outlets, and someone just passingly mentioned. Sadly, I don't know where that is anymore, or else I could theoretically show it on screen or something, but that is something that was very inspiring to me. Now it's time to just sit here and eat that. Okay. And also it is nighttime, so I need to lie down, so that way I actually am well rested. Doesn't do anything, but I just prefer there not being hostile mobs spawning around. But now, what is the next question? Yes, I've had a couple of people talk about how they were actually inspired by my series to make their own series. And they were always just like, oh man, I want to make a series like yours where it's just you playing Minecraft. And I'm just like, I mean, do it. Like, if you want to make something like this, go for it. I have... The best I can honestly just say is, if you want to do it, then do it. I don't know what else to say. I have absolute fun playing the series, and if you think you would, then do it. Like, I would love to see more people do Let's Play kind of stuff, because, yes, there's already quite a few people who do Let's Play stuff, but don't let that stop you, honestly. If you want to have fun recording and playing through the game, if you honestly think that is something fun, then try it. There is no reason to stop yourself from trying to have fun. I am also going to do something very quickly, and I am going to mute the game, in which case it will be completely muted for you guys. So that way you're not just hearing the endless clicking of dispensers. But yeah, if you want to like make a series like mine or whatever the heck, go for it. I can't stop you. If you like this idea, or if you just like playing on Minecraft, do it. This is just a Let's Play series. There are tons of people who do it. I am nowhere near the first person who's done it, so absolutely, I do not, heck, I don't even have it copyrighted, so just do it, like, even if I try copywriting it, I'd be surprised if I get it. So many more people have done this before me, so just go for it, man. I would love to see more people do Let's Play kind of stuff. In which case, going alongside that is, I've had one or two people ask me about this, but like, motivation playing the game. This is always, not always, but this has kind of been, actually I guess kind of always, this has been a thing that's been around the game for a long time. People are motivated in the game in different ways. And for some people, it's kind of hard to just get this idea of, I have an idea and I want to do it. Some people wind up having that problem where they're just kind of like, I'm not sure what I want to do now. In which case, in my opinion, this is a sandbox game. There is an infinite number of ideas to do. But there's only so many things that you can wind up doing. And yes, that is absolutely true. Where you wind up hitting a point where it's like, I want to do something useful, but there's only so many useful things that you can do. But, in my opinion, that shouldn't be the thing to stop you. One of the most important things about Minecraft is that it's a building game. And alone, two things are going to wind up really helping you be able to continue doing more projects. Number one, make sure you don't get burnout, because burnout is one of the worst feelings. I've felt it before, and anytime I experience burnout, I always stop, look back, and go like, okay, why am I being burned out? What did I do? And then try to figure out, what am I doing? And then seeing, okay, can I still do, like, that game, or can I still do that project just differently? Still be extremely interested in it, and not be burned out. Now, because of that, you wind up going through these little phases. Like, you can often see it in my episodes where I'm just like, oh, I just want to focus on this one project, because that's what I'm interested in at that time. And on other projects, I'll begin it and then just immediately run away from it. Some examples of that in my series is I was very heavily focusing on the villager self-distributor, because I'm very interested in that. Like, that is a very big, interesting project to me, but I wound up doing that for several episodes. Well, let's go for the nether digging project. That's just not a project I'm very interested in. It's a lot of digging. I mean, a lot of digging. And yeah, that's just not something I really want to sit down and spend a lot of time doing. I mean, I want it to be done. I just don't want to do it. So that's kind of like the problem of I began it and immediately burned out of it. In which case, it also doesn't help that I've already done several building projects, not only in this series, but just in my general Minecrafting career. Digging projects has just been something that I've done for a long time, so it's kind of hard to get that motivation to do a digging project or anything like that when I've already done it so many times. But the problem is that the digging project's for something that's extremely important. I want to be in setting up a beacon farm, and setting up a beacon farm is going to be enormous, because a beacon farm is one of the best farms in game. But you can either set it up shabbily and have it be kind of good, or you spend the time and make one of the best you can do. And I want to try in my series to go through and try setting up the best circumstances I can, and then make a farm of my design. Because whenever I play Minecraft, I don't want to sit there and just copy other people. I don't want to sit there and copy designs and farms that other people have made. I want to design it myself. This tree farm, for example, the farm that I'm using right now, I remember sitting down for hours, or it might have just been like, I guess it was a few hours, in a creative world and just testing out redstone and being like, okay, how do I figure this out? And even then, I was like, I only got like a partial understanding of it before I was like, you know what, I'm just going to build this in my single player series. Went over my single player series and actually made the working design, because in creative, I was like, how do I do this? Okay, I think I got this. Never made a finished design. Was just doing some experimentation. Went over my single player series, hammered out a design perfectly. It was just like, I spent hours designing some creative, went over to single player, made it much better in a much better time. I like it whenever something like that happens, because you feel so accomplished being able to make something that not only works, but it's something that's yours. Like, this is my farm. This is a tree farm of my design. Are there better ones? 100%. Nowhere close. I definitely did not design the best tree farm. I refuse to believe that. But this is my design. I appreciate that I have made my design. So that is just something that is important to me. that I always make something that's mine. I don't make something that's someone else's. I have only ever made a farm of someone else's design a handful of times. I remember the sand generator. Back when the sand duping glitch was a thing, I would wind up using a farm made by someone else. But basically, that's the only times I would ever use a design like that. If it's literally like a glitch or something where the only way to do it is this exact way. Unless you sit down and try to understand very particular game mechanics, then you're not going to be able to do it. And I'm not going to sit here and research game mechanics too heavily. It's something that I've always been interested in, like, not game mechanics, but game code is, I guess, the better way to put this. Because game mechanics is something I'm extremely interested in. Game code, I'm interested, but not enough to spend a lot of time researching it. So, that's not exactly something that's extremely high on my ratings of, like, oh, I want to get that done. So, that's kind of like where I'm lying with motivation is, even if it seems unnecessary, even if it's just like, I'm just going to copy someone else's thing, design your own thing. It's so much more fun, it's so much more interesting, and topmost, it's so much better for the long-term game. More just in your way of playing it, because if you just sit down copying everyone's farms, then you're probably only going to play the game for a little bit, because then you're just going to make the most optimal thing every time. If you just make what you think is fun every single time, then your farms are just going to wind up being so much more personable, something that you find a lot more interesting because of it. So that's my kind of recommendation on that. Now, I've also, for the next question, had a lot of people ask about this. This is probably one of my most asked questions, by far. In which case, it's about my name. The name of my channel, and the name of my IGN. Like, if I hit the T bar right here real quick. Oh, I probably want to finish this, but if I hit why isn't that? Oh, TT, and then hit enter. You'll see my name is by Rubydung. That is Rubydung in reference to a very old Minecraft project. Bunch of history going on around that. It is, if you don't know, before Minecraft became Minecraft, it was the name of another thing. But, the best way I can describe this is one of my passions is game history. And, technically, whenever I went to go make an account for Minecraft, it wasn't this name. Like, the first account I had was not this name. But then, like, weeks later or whatever, I was like, you know what? I want a real username. I don't want this thing. Because it was basically just a couple of, like, random stuff. I barely even remember what the name was. So, I was just like, yeah, I'm not going to play that. I'm going to make a real name. And I learned that the name of the game before it became the game was called Rubydung, and I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to call it by Rubydung, so that way I'm telling you to buy a version of the game that cannot be bought anymore, because I thought not only was that funny, but I thought that was very interesting. So yeah, that's kind of like where my name came from, and then when I went to go make the channel, I just was like, well, I'm just going to call it Rubydung. Like, I didn't put the name by in there, I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to call it Rubydung. And because of that, I have had a lot of people, I'm pretty sure, search up the words Rubydung and then find my channel and then just be like, what the heck, this guy's clogging up the feed. I'm looking for videos about Rubydung and here's this dude playing not Rubydung. And I'm just like, yeah, that's fair. To all my apologies to people who are like that, where they're just like, I don't want to see this guy playing normal Minecraft, I want to see someone playing Rubydung, and it's just like, that is fair, I understand. That was not my intention. I had this name, and then made my series. I was not thinking of someone searching up the channel Rubydung being like, oh, I'm wanting to watch Rubydung, and then they're getting me instead. Like, that was not my intent. Anyone who feels offended or annoyed by that, my apologies. I can't fix that. So, that's just kind of how it is now. Regardless of what I do, I'm pretty sure that's just how it is. So that's the history behind my name. An apology to people who have been kind of, I shouldn't say scorned by it, but definitely annoyed by it. Next up, this was a passing question. I think it was only mentioned 1 or 2 times, but texture packs. In which case, if you don't know, I don't use texture packs in my series. I think that's pretty obvious. A lot of Let's Players do use texture packs, but I really don't see a reason to use one. Now, in my opinion, there's 2 reasons why I don't use a texture pack. The 2 reasons I don't use a texture pack are because, 1, everyone can at least understand what items are in base Minecraft. Unless you've literally been using a texture pack for so long that, or so early on, and you don't watch any Minecraft content, you would be surprised by the textures of certain things. But if you watch other Minecraft content, you're gonna know what certain items look like. And in my opinion, the best thing to do is to just use the vanilla texture pack. Now, yes, there are really good texture packs out there. There are really good ones. But that isn't what my series is about. My series isn't about making the game look better through something like that. Because I don't like using this word, but it's the best word I can think of, is that's a pseudo crutch. Because if you have a bunch of better looking blocks, then it might make your build look better. In which case, that's kind of like a self-validation where it's just like, hey, because of all these blocks looking better, I made a much better looking build. That makes me feel like a much better builder. In reality, if you were to turn that off, or to someone else's eyes, it's gonna be like, yeah, that build's fine. Like, just because the texture pack makes something look good, it doesn't mean it's actually good. Now, if I was in a single player series and was not recording at all, I was just playing through this, could I have used a texture pack? Most likely. I might have wound up using a pack like OCD, for example, because I really like that pack. But I don't see a reason to do something like that, because it's not something that is going to be not only good for viewers, but if I am building something, I don't want to build it and then people look at it and go, that doesn't look very good, because they would then download this world or something in a normal texture pack and be like, oh god, everything looks so disgusting. Because I built this world in a different texture pack, I designed it to look good in that texture pack, not a normal pack, but not everyone uses that. So that winds up causing that sort of problems. I feel that the benefits of a texture pack are near negligible, but the deficits are insurmountable. Like, they're ridiculous. So on single play, typically fine, but on anything like multiplayer or a recorded series, they're not worth it. Yeah, there's just no reason to use a texture pack in any circumstance that's not single player. And in the event you're recording that, then it loses that benefit as well. Like, there's no good reason to do that. And on the topic of multiplayer, this is probably my second most requested comment. SMP, a multiplayer series, survival multiplayer. Am I ever going to do it? Am I ever going to do a survival multiplayer series? And in short, maybe. The problem is, I don't know what series I would do. Now, I am on a Minecraft server with a few friends. We do play Minecraft, and we do play it quite often. And we all are very interested in the game. The problem is, I don't know if it's recordable. It's not the typical type of Minecraft series. And, number 2, I'm wanting to focus on this series. Like, this is my main series by far. This is the main series. So, I'm wanting to focus on this as much as possible. While something like that, like something like a multiplayer series, would definitely become a secondary series. And I don't know what I would do for that. Now, there's a lot you can do. We go through seasons and stuff like that. We wind up making builds and play together. We wind up getting into multiplayer shenanigans. But that is very interesting and very nice, but I'm not sure how I would implement that quite yet. Now, I want to. It's something that I would find very interesting and very nice. But I'm not sure how. Now, it would give a nice spice on the game, if you would. A nice spice. Because it has been some time since we got an update. But that's just kind of how the game's going now, apparently. It used to be a time where you would get, like, these smaller updates every few weeks. Where it's like, oh, here's, like, this new item or this new block. Go ahead and play with it. And those would be the updates, where there would be an entire update just for squids. And be like, hey, there's squids in the game. Go have fun with that. And the people who didn't care about it would just continue playing the game, and the people who cared about it would do stuff with them. That's just how the game went. You would have these every once in a while updates, and you would play around with those small mechanics. Now, I typically avoided that kind of stuff because update history is one of those kind of weird fields in gameplay. For example, one of the games that I play a lot is Team Fortress 2. It's one of my all-time favorite games. There is a lot of people who make content for that game that are very focused on update content. Like, for example, a few months ago, they released the End of the Line update. And I was just like, oh, it's a cool update, but I'm not gonna sit there on... Oh man, I'm trying to remember the name of the map, the one where you have to go through that percentage train and stuff like that, where it's just weird gameplay mechanics or whatever. And then there are people on YouTube that are playing that a lot because those updates give you a lot of different content and people thrive off different content. But to me personally, I'm playing the game because it's fun. I'm not here to focus on, oh, they've added something new, I need to only do stuff with the new things. No, it's a new thing in the game, it's still the game, it's now this nice little sprinkle that's into the game, so that's something that's very important. I've kind of gotten off topic from the main question here a little bit, but it's still kind of tying into multiplayer here a little bit, because a problem with multiplayer is that you are very reliant on two things with multiplayer. You're very reliant off of other people in particular. And number two, you're very reliant off how those other people play. Whenever you're playing a multiplayer series, and if you're recording it, you are very reactionary. And if you are not, then you are making a single player series. And I already have a single player series. So one of the things I want to avoid the most is getting into that situation where I'm just making the same series again, just from fresh. Now, I'm sure some people would be interested in being like, hey, a second series, like, look at it, like, this world is effing ancient. It is so old, because this world has been around since Alpha 1.2. This is an alpha world, so it's just like, this world is effing ancient. Why are you still playing it? And the reason is I'm still having fun playing it. I love this world. It's really hard for me to abandon a world I like unless I have good reason to. So, I typically am just going to be like, I still just want to play this world. It's my world. I want to play it. So, that's just kind of like how that's been going on here. And the similar thing is going to wind up happening with multiplayer, where it's just like we get into a world, we love the world. Why abandon the world? We love the world. So, I'm perfectly fine with that. No reason to ever abandon a world for multiplayer. But then we're going to reach that problem where a couple of people are that update dependent, where they want to see those new things. Then the next thing will come out and they want to see that new thing. And then wait some time to see that new thing. Like, just keep messing with new things. They don't want to mess with the old things. They just want to mess with the new things. Then burn themselves out in the new thing. And then wait for the next new thing to come out. And then burn themselves out on that. And then the entire rest of the game is just going to be stuff they burn themselves out on and apparently not be reinterested in. So, that's something that I do just to want to avoid, and whenever you enter a multiplayer series, if there's one person like that, then they're going to wind up not being really a factor in multiplayer, and then it's just going to be the rest of you. So you really need a series where you have no one like that. It's just people interested in playing the game and not really focusing on the new stuff in the game. They're just trying to play the game. So I always try to focus on just playing the game. Like, I feel that is where the strongest part of the game is playing it. If you focus on just the updates, you're going to run into so many problems because the game can't update forever. It is actually impossible. There is no game that can stay updated forever. Now, there's a lot of games that are still being updated that are fairly old. I already talked about Team Fortress 2. That's still receiving updates. Like, that's been around for longer than Minecraft. Oh, hey, the tree farm is nice and full, so time to chop this down. Also, you can see why it's such a chore for me to do the tree farm. It takes forever, and it only gets you a little bit. But, as I was saying, I also can go ahead and unmute some stuff so we can hear the breaking of the logs. But, yeah, that is kind of like the contract you enter whenever you start a multiplayer series, and you're very reliant on the other players because of it. And you enter this kind of awkward agreement where it's just like, okay, we need to make sure none of us are trying to burn each other out on the game. So, it's a multiplayer series is very delicate, and you need to make sure that you're very careful when making it. You can't just start a multiplayer series and expect it to work. And on top of that, with all of those factors in place, you also need to be fun. A multiplayer series can be boring so quickly just with boring people. You need to have fun people doing the series. So that's another thing that you need to be cautious of. So yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on a multiplayer series. I'm super open to do it, but I'm only willing to do it in the right circumstances. Whew, that was a long answer. Okay. Next up, I had a conversation about this in the comments before, so I might as well try answering this, is thumbnails. Now, you might notice my thumbnails. They are a singular color with the Minecraft logo plastered on top of it. That's it. That's all it is. It's nothing complex. Now, that is even more than what it used to be. A long time ago, I didn't even do that. I just uploaded the video with nothing, because that wasn't a thing you could do. You just had to upload an episode, and then there would be no thumbnail. Well, what I decided to do, when I was, a little bit into my series, they released thumbnails, and then I sat on it some time before eventually being like, you know what, I am gonna do thumbnails. But I'm not gonna do anything in particularly special. What I'm going to do is, a very simple thing. I'm just going to pick up an Excel document, something that I feel I am extremely knowledgeable, well, not extremely, but very knowledgeable in, is Excel documents. What I decided to do was, in this Excel document, I decided to create a system where it would generate random colors for me, in which case, what I would do is open the document, generate a random color, and get that tagged to a image, in which case it would be of thumbnail size, and then that would put the Minecraft logo on. So, whenever I would need a new series, I would just generate an image with a random color, but it would be the exact same format as every other time I've done it. So, all of my series are just replacing the color with a completely random color, and I never decide the color. I just let the generator pick a color for me. I never sit there and be like, oh, that color, I don't really like it, or else it's just going to take too long and I'm going to run out of colors very quickly. I'm just letting it generate a color for me. And on top of that, I think I'm a terrible judge of color because I am colorblind. If that is something that I have not mentioned in my series, I think I mentioned it slightly in passing, but I am colorblind. So that is something that I do at least need to factor in a little bit because I know I'm not a good judge of color. So I'm not going to sit here judging it too often because I'm a terrible judge of it. So that's something that I really don't worry about. And yeah, my series is just going to be using those thumbnails. I'm not wanting anything too clicky or too surprising, just simply because that's not what my series is. My series is very much, you could watch just about any episode. In my opinion, it's very rare to come across an episode of my series that is like, oh, this is like, you watch this episode and only this episode, it gives you like the synopsis of everything. No, my series I've always tried to treat as like this homogeneous kind of blob thing, where it's this whole, a greater whole of a series. You don't watch one episode for the episode, you watch the series for the series. In which case, I feel like that kind of gives long-term use to the series. You don't really sit there watching one, like, you don't want to watch a show just for the episode. You want to watch the show for the show. If you want to watch it just for the episode, go watch a movie. Like, there is strong points in doing both. There are YouTubers that do one-off kind of videos, in which case those are more comparable to movies, in which case they do them very well. I'm not going to try doing them because I don't think I would be able to make them interestingly or well. But there are people who do it interestingly and well. But I think I'm capable of doing a series that is more comparable to a TV show, a greater whole, and a greater unit. So I think I can do that strongly, and I've been spending so much of my series trying to do that strongly. So that is kind of where my alignments lie on doing something like that. But for thumbnails, I think they absolutely align with my kind of philosophy for that. So I don't want to sit here doing clickbaity kind of things, because that's not the series I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to make a series where I want to drive people looking at the video because they saw some girl in a bikini or something. I am here to just do a Let's Play series. Now, if I was to begin getting into this territory of, like, ooh, I want to have thumbnails that better represent my series, I want to hit this point of, like, at what point what is the limit of a thumbnail that represent my series? Like, what is that? What is a thumbnail that represent my series? I don't think that's an answerable question. Not in the sense that it's an impossible question, just not one that can be answered. So I just choose to ignore it. I'm just going to continue uploading these thumbnails that work for my series. And I could sit here and personalize every single thumbnail, but what's the point of that? What do I gain? I'm not trying to drive people watching the episode, I'm trying to get people to watch the series, because the series itself is strong, not the individual episodes. So, oh, lag. That's my main philosophy involving the actual thumbnails. So, next up, going on from that, I've had a couple of people mention this to me, and I do find it interesting, is, watching this, the actual contacting of me and how I talk to friends and stuff like that. How does that go? Because that is kind of, like, important to a multiplayer series. And also, like, in the event any fans want to ask me stuff. Could that even be possible? Kind of, I guess. I don't really think it's something that is too feasible right now, at least, because my primary thing that I use right now is Skype. So that, like, just about anyone, the primary thing to use is Skype, just because it's the only thing out there that's good. Now, that's, like, for messaging services primarily. I know that me and my friends have been using TeamSpeech a lot now, so, like, we're definitely trying to phase out Skype because Skype is not the best. It's something that's fine. So that's kind of, like, something that's not really too much out there right now, just kind of experimenting with different services and what sort of ideas that we can use. I think it's only a matter of time before a service comes around that's better than Skype. Like, mark my words, Skype is been the same for, like, a decade now, so it's not particularly surprising that they feel outdated and old. While I think that it's only a matter of time before a new service is going to come out and they're going to feel, like, actually usable. Like, actually update and have good actual UIs and stuff like that. Like, that's something that's very important to having one of those types of services. And, oh, I probably should, instead of getting bones from the skeleton farm, I have a ton of bones here, so I'm just going to grab those. But yeah, that is something that is, I use a lot of. I know that we've been using TeamSpeak a lot, just trying to avoid Skype, but I still feel TeamSpeak has its own problems, particularly if you use public servers for TeamSpeak. in which case there is very often just going to wind up being people that are also in those public servers that will just join the call and harass you. Or it's just like, yo, I'm just trying to have a conversation with my friends, like, can you please stop doing that? And the best way to typically deal with it was just to shut up and not say a single word while those people are harassing you inside the call. So I don't really enjoy that part too much of actual, I probably should only have about one line of this stuff, so I'm just going to throw back the rest of it, and that should be enough to fill, no, wait, technically need to get, like, 2 lines. I'll get, it's not like a full chest, so I'll get that many. But yeah, that's kind of where my, that's kind of like what I wind up using, is probably Skype for messaging and TeamSpeak for actual talking, but mark my words, that's probably going to wind up changing at some point, because what on earth like, it's only a matter of time before something better comes out. I'm extremely confident. We began recently using TeamSpeak over Skype, so I think it's just a matter of time before Skype is just completely phased out by basically everyone, because the only reason people still use it is it's the only decent thing that's currently being used. So I think it's just a matter of time before it's gone completely. So with that, I also had a handful of people ask me about my skin. So let me take this off real quick, in which case you can see my skin here. I always wear armor in my episodes, so it's kind of hard to see it, but I am Chell from Portal. In which case, you might be like, oh, what's that? Well, most of you probably aren't. And in my opinion, this is quite possibly my favorite game series of all time. In which case, I started the series actually as, I believe I was actually a default skin, a Steve skin, whenever the series first started. Just simply because I didn't bother getting a skin. Still, it was a recent-ish account, so I was just like, But, an important thing that wound up developing is that, whenever I decided to do the Nether update, the one where, like, the Nether and pumpkins and all that kind of stuff came out, and I was just like, you know what? I am going to make a Portal joke here, because I'm going to be doing a lot of testing stuff with portals, and if you're doing testing stuff with portals, you would be amiss to not play, Chell in that, in which case, at that time, it was only Portal 1, Portal 2 hadn't came out yet, so I just had a Chell 1 skin, so it was just the orange jumpsuit, and that was about it. So that's really what I was doing back then. Oh, I just need one a little bit extra stack of bones. So I'm just going to go ahead and grab that. In which case, that is what was primarily going on there. I was just playing Chell with a little bit of, like, old Chell. And then, a little into my series, not too long, about 30-ish episodes or so, Portal 2 dropped. Like, Portal 2 dropped. Now, we knew it was coming for a little bit, but Portal 2 dropped. And then when it did, immediately I updated my skin to the new Chell, because I really loved the redesign of Chell. I thought it was absolutely fantastic, and I wanted my skin to be the new Chell. So I updated my version of the skin, so that way I could be the new version of Chell, just because I liked it so much. So that's what's going on in my series. So I'm just doing it like that. But yeah, that is the primary thing going on with that. In which case, I've also had passingly mentioned is any other games that I like. In which case, I just mentioned the actual so I've already mentioned Portal, one of my all-time favorite game series. In which case, I would be amiss to not mention some of the other games. I've already mentioned TF2, and The Line came out. What's another game that I'm really passionate about? Okay, in which case, I think I've passingly mentioned this a little bit, but there is one of the only competitive games that I'm really into. Yes, I know that there is TF2 competitive. I don't play it competitively. In which case, the only game that I really get competitive into is MTG, Magic the Gathering. It's a tabletop card game. I can get really into that. I've played it semi-competitively for a little while now, and they came in with a new expansion that I was really excited about. In my opinion, so this is so that just came out, it was called Theros. And in my opinion, it's the best draft format. Oh wait, I forgot some bones. Okay, I'll just go ahead and grab a little bit. Honestly, what's in the chest right now will probably be enough. Theros just came out, and in my opinion, it's the best draft format, draft expansion, draft block that's ever came out. Like, this is the best. Like, it's honestly the best that we've ever seen. And on top of that, 1 year ago, like, I think it's been almost exactly a year ago, we had a Conspiracy released, and that took the place for my new favorite set. Like, oh my gosh, we've been on some bangers recently. We are no longer in the days of the Dark or Mirage or stuff like that, where it's like the cards are a bit iffy. Where it's just like, oh man, we're far from Homelands. Oh gosh, are we far from Homelands? Oh man. But yeah, I'm super excited about that. Like, Theros is absolutely fantastic. I've been having an absolute blast with that game. Still play a lot of TF2. TF2, it's one of the only FPS games that I really get into. It's just, FPS is not a genre that I often appreciate. I like FPSs can be cool, but it's not a game genre that I distinguish as very me. Whenever I play a game genre, I am looking for one thing very much in particular. One thing in particular. And, like, this is my kind of base that I judge all games off of, in which case it's, how am I allowed to play the game? And this is something that you can very much see with some of my favorite games of all time. How I'm allowed to play the game, one of the most important things to me is, am I allowed to play the game in a way that you shouldn't? Not that you shouldn't, but is very much like, that is not how the developers clearly wanted you to play. Because if the developers wanted you to play a certain way, and they only wanted you to play that way, I don't think that's very fun or interesting. What I much prefer is whenever you're playing a game, and you're doing something or something is happening that's very much like unique to the experience. It very much feels something like the developers were just like, I guess that's happening. Okay. So that's just kind of like what my favorite thing about that. Hence why I love Minecraft so much. The game developers clearly just made the game with no intent for you to play, like, any goals in mind, and just told you to run wild. And that's why I love the game. I just run wild. While with something like Magic the Gathering, one of my all-time favorite things to build are the weird decks that kind of abuse weird mechanics, or things that have been overprinted, or stuff like that. Like, one of my all-time favorite decks in Magic the Gathering, if anyone plays that game, they're going to immediately hate me from this, is Turbo Fog decks and things like that, where it's very much like, this is a mechanic that is not working. Like, this was a one-off card that was printed, and then a couple of other cards were printed were kind of like it, and you have made a deck that's just annoying because of it, that abuses weird mechanics in the game to try winning. That's why I like it, is that you're using these weird little niche things and being rewarded for being knowledgeable about the game to wind up getting that little bit of an edge, while TF2 is the flip side of that. TF2 kind of has this community built up where it's people who are just around to play a fun FPS shooter. They're not there to win the game. Now, there are a couple of people who are, but you're gonna run into, like, hoovies and friendlies and dance-offs and, like, all of these weird things that are just, like, and people just accept it in game, like, universally almost, where it's just like, oh yeah, that's a thing that's going on. That's just a weird part of the game with people being weird. And it's such an old game that there is so much of that. So there's so much to really look into for that. And that's really what defines a good game for me, is being able to play it in your own way. Being able to sit down and be like, this is how I want to play the game. And TF2 also really leans into that because they have a loadout system where what you do is you get to select all of these really weird weapons and be able to play the game in such a distinguishable weird way. Because clearly when Valve added those weapons, they didn't think of every possible combination. And because of that, you get some weird designs. And I find that to be so much fun. That is, in my opinion, the best way to play a game. And ultimately, that's kind of where my ideas of game philosophy ultimately wind up. So that is kind of where my alliances lie for something like that, and where I feel the best gameplays are at. Now, I don't think that's the only way to make a game, but I feel that is one of the best ways, is player control. The more control you give to them, and the more resources you give them to give them that kind of control, the better your game is overall. Because not only do you reward people for being knowledgeable about the game, but you reward them for playing it in unique ways. Because the more unique ways that game can be played, the better the game is ultimately. Because that is a more customized experience, and it is a newer way to do it every time. And with all of that nice and said, I think that might be it for questions, and I think that might be it for today's episode. In which case, guys, I do hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. It's mostly just tree farming, but you also see why it takes me so long to do this. It takes so long to fill out the tree farm. It takes, like, I think it took me about 40 minutes to fill out a tree farm. So, you can see why I get a little bit annoyed about this. It takes forever. And my finger goddamn hurts after every time because I just have to sit here and hold down the button. But yeah, guys, that's going to be doing it for today's episode. I do hope you guys enjoyed. If you want to see me do anything here in the future, be sure to tell me. I always love hearing your guys' suggestions. There's always an infinite number of things that I can wind up doing, because this is a sandbox game, and I always have a million projects going on at any given time, so if you want to see me do anything in particular, be sure to tell me. I always love hearing guys' suggestions. But with all of that now nice and said, I think that's going to be doing it for today's episode. I do hope you guys enjoyed. I'm seeing you guys here in the next one. So long. See ya. Bye! Just gonna sit here at the tree farm for so much longer.